Welcome everybody to our January 22nd, 2024 LeSueur City Council meeting. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, you were all presented with your packets over the weekend. Hopefully you had time to look it over closely, reach out with any questions. At this time, I will accept any motions to approve the agenda for tonight. Second. Thank you, Councilmember Schweter, second by Councilmember Sullivan. Any comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to presentations. At this time, we will have a presentation for the Planning Commission. And get that report from Mr. Newell Krogman. Do you have anything you want to add, Mr. Wilkie, before he does his presentation?
I always like to add something. So I'll just say thank you to the Chair of the Planning Commission, Newell Krogman, for coming forward today as part of the Planning Commission's bylaws that requires the Planning Commission to give an annual report to the City Council before February 15th of each year. Last year, for those who were on council, everyone here was last year, February, former Chair Dan Ryerson came and gave the presentation last year. We've got a couple of slides here for Mr. Krogman to talk through a little bit about what happened in 2023 with the Planning Commission and what is expected to happen in 2024.
Thank you, Joe. Beginning this year, beginning 2023, that is the one we're talking about, the City Council, by action and through an ordinance change, we went from 7 to 5 members, which I want to report to you has worked extremely well. Our problem when we had 7 members was we weren't getting a quorum and we weren't able to have meetings. With the 5-member commission, we've done very well, and so that has helped. Dan Ryerson was mentioned. Dan was with us until April, actually in May, and then he resigned. You can see that in the outline that you have. He moved out of the area, so therefore could not be on the commission, and I was elected to be the chair, so that's why I'm here this evening. I'm going to give you a quick overview. We had, if you look on that sheet, you should see somewhere it says we had a total of 6 public hearings. The public hearings are the function that we do that hearing for you, and then when those matters come to the council, the hearing has already been held. We were involved in rezoning 4 times, which was probably a little unusual, more than normal in a given year. CUPs, we had 2 of them. One of them was the Park Elementary School building and what was going to, excuse me, not Park Elementary, the new elementary school building. And the other was for a 12-unit apartment building, kitty corner from City Hall here in the corner of the Tiller and Main parking lot area. So we had a relatively busy year. And there were also no variances last year that we had to deal with. Bottom line is, the other thing that we did was the Future of the City Forum. Some of you were able to be there. We did a survey for that ahead of time. We'll do that again this year. I would strongly recommend that each of you look at the detail of that survey because it gives you a whole lot. Joe, help me out. Do we have like over 300 comments, if I remember right? Do you remember off the top of your head?
No, there were 300 plus responses. And then comments were dozens. Yes.
Yes, there were a lot. Okay. Let me mention a couple other things. Justin Nielsen, a staff person, is our staff person. Done an exceptional job for us. For example, you'll notice in February, it says issued binders that contain various bits of information for council members. He put those together. He has been an exceptional staff member for us. Joe also attends, so we appreciate that. And Scott has been the city council non-voting representative who attends the council meetings, has helped us immensely with information about what you're doing, and of course in bringing information back to you. The Future of the City Forum I mentioned, we did a survey for that. The forum was held in October, and we're working in plans for what we're going to do this year for that forum. So that's basically it. I do want to say one other thing about next year. We're going to be taking an extensive look as the commission this year, in other words, 2024, at the comprehensive plan, reviewing that. We're also going to be doing some work with zoning. There's some things that need to be cleaned up in our maps and our work with zoning. We'll continue with the Future of the City Forum. One thing we're doing also is doing training for our commission members rather, and we'll do that consistently throughout the year. So that's kind of the update. I hope you can look at this in detail. You'll see the work that's been done by your planning commission. I should say that personally, as the chair of that group, I'm very pleased with the work that they have done and will continue to do. So I'll stand for any questions. If not, I'll let you move on to other business. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Krogman, for your input. I want to thank you for your work on the commission and stepping up as our chair of the commission. Also, Councilmember Schlueter, thank you for your work with the commission also. So anybody have any questions at all? Anything at all? Nothing.
We will, by the way, this year be, I'm sure, with the Park Elementary building, which I almost misspoke about before, there's going to be some work that comes from that, okay? Because they're going to do something with that building. And we get to that, we're going to deal with zoning issues, we're going to deal with how they can use that property. And so we'll be an integral part of the process, which ultimately decisions will be made by you, but recommendations will come from the planning commission. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Moving on to consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and have been made available to the city council at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. These items will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event they will be removed from the agenda and considered in normal sequence. At this time, I will entertain any motions to accept tonight's consent agenda. So, Councilmember Sullivan, seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Public comment. I don't think we have anybody signed up for public comment. Mr. Graff, you want to check to see if there's anybody signed up? I don't see anybody here, so I'm going to assume we have nothing. Thank you. And with that, I will move on to the city administrator's update. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. A few items tonight. 2 weeks ago, a couple of members of us from staff, Mr. Graff and I attended the Giants Reality Challenge up at the high school, meeting with the juniors. I want to thank the Lesueur Rotary and all the community members who volunteered for that program. The kids learn a lot. We learn a lot from the kids, kind of where they're at, and the program seems to get better each time. So I appreciate the community for putting that on. Had an opportunity to touch base with counterparts at Region 9 Development Commission back on January 12th with Councilmember Schlueter. Planning Commission, we met as well. We're started talking through the 2024 work plan, which Mr. Krogman summarized tonight. In addition to Park Elementary School, we continue to look at housing opportunities within the community. And the great thing about the Planning Commission is they handle a lot of the controversial subjects before they even get to City Council. So those public hearings that the Planning Commission takes on do save some time at City Council. And they're able to answer a lot of questions. The goal of staff is to try to polish everything up and vet projects before they even get to Planning Commission. And then Planning Commission does the final vetting before the recommendations come to City Council. So I appreciate what the Planning Commission does. At the EDA meeting tonight, staff member Zach Kobani gave an update on the DNR outdoor grant. So for those who recall from last year or 2 years ago, there's a DNR recreation grant program that the city has applied for both in 2022 for Legion Park and 2023 for Mayo Park. We're exploring some new options for the DNR grant in 2024. We'll bring those to RPAC before they come to City Council for consideration. We use post plan as kind of a jumping off point for grants when it comes to parks. And our leadership in the city has some different ideas about what to do at Legion Park that we'll bring to RPAC at the next RPAC meeting. Looking forward to the February 12th City Council meeting. 2 notes on that. One is we'll have a regular meeting and then we'll have a work session afterwards to discuss our City Council goals for 2023 and 2024. Excuse me, 2024 and 2025. Also, the February 12th City Council meeting, we will, staff will bring forward a recommendation and a request to City Council for the RAISE grant. The RAISE grant is a federal U.S. Department of Transportation grant that the city applied for back in 2023, which would look at a planning study to be conducted for the 169 corridor. We are planning to reapply in 2024, and so we'll bring back the proposal for the application at the February 12th meeting. So staff have been working on that. I had a touch base with MnDOT, speaking of 169 corridor, back on January 11th, talking about potential development along 169. And one of the items that I continue to push MnDOT on is trail access into and out of LeSueur. So there's lots of discussion about the trail that will likely be going in between Mankato and St. Peter along Highway 22. There's additional talk about the trail system that's extending from the Minnesota River Trail, Minnesota Valley Trail, from Jordan to Blakely and now along County Road 6 in Henderson. We're getting to the point where the Minnesota River Trail, which comes from Redwood Falls down to Mankato, and the Minnesota Valley Trail, which comes from Minneapolis down toward Mankato, is going to end up with a gap between the city of LeSueur and the city of Henderson. So every time we talk to MnDOT, we're pushing them on what we need to do proactively to connect those two trail systems. Early February, we're going to have a visit from the Department of Employment and Economic Development to look at the Valley Green Square Mall grant that we received $850,000 for to reconstruct Main Street. Who does an annual check-in or biannual check-in just to make sure that the project went well and all of our documentation is in order. And then we do have a couple of city staff members who will be participating in the middle school career day coming up on February 9th. And looking forward to that. It's a good opportunity to try to recruit some folks for all the different career opportunities that municipal businesses provide. That's all I have for time.
Thank you, Mr. Roby. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby? If not, that'll take us into the regular agenda. And we'll start with agenda item 8A, and that would be the unfunded transfers. Mr. Roby, you want to explain that to us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Finance Director Graff is here as well. I'm not going to ask him to come up necessarily unless there's some detailed questions that he's more equipped to answer. So when the city wants to move money between different funds in the city's accounting books, we need to ask City Council for approval to do so. And every so often, the last time was in early 2021, just around the time that I came to the city, there will be some funds that have excess dollars, either through bond funds that are unused, or in this case, there's some positive balance in two old bond funds that the bonds have been paid off and there's a balance remaining in those funds. We can take those dollars and apply them to other funds if appropriate. And in this case, there are two different transfers that we're recommending at this time. One is transferring $27,621.40 from the library refunding bond fund to the North 2nd Street construction refunding bond fund. And second is transferring $12,334.39 from the 2010D capital improvement bond to the, again, the North 2nd Street reconstruction refunding bond fund. The transfer of those two dollar amounts effectively decreases the amount that we have to levy for the North 2nd Street reconstruction refunding bond over time. It's $30,000, so it's not a significant amount in the grand scheme of the cost of that project, the amount of the bond. But it will allow us to effectively close out the library refunding bond fund and the 2010D capital improvement bond fund.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions regarding this? If not, I'll accept, entertain any motions to approve resolution R 2024-005, directing finance director to initiate interfund transfers as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Huntington, seconded by Councilmember Swanberg, any discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8B, that'd be the 2024 wastewater budget update. Mr. Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Upon council approval of the 2024 budget, both for general fund and the utilities, staff discovered there was an expense line item that requires city council approval that was not included in the original budget. It's specific to the wastewater treatment facility, and it's related to the utility costs. We do budget typically a significant amount of potential expense in the wastewater treatment fund, specifically related to the recirculation pump. If the recirculation pump at the treatment facility fails, we won't be able to recycle the water from the plant. And during the treatment process, we'll have to be forced to purchase water from our own utility, which would drive the utility bill up. So each year we do typically budget for this amount. In 2024, it's $192,280. That was not included in the initial budget in December. It was discovered near the end of December when the budget was being prepared for loading. I think most importantly, for those paying attention at home, the addition of this expense in updating the 2024 budget does not have an effect on the wastewater rates that were already adopted by City Council. And this is an expense that has been historically budgeted.
So that $192,280 is more or less kind of a safety net. If we don't have any problems, we won't be using it.
Correct.
Okay, very good. And that's for how long of a time would we have to use city water to do the repairs? How long does that take? Do you have any idea?
It would depend on the type of damage, if we needed to replace the pump or if it was a simple repair. So back in 2022, I believe it was in April of 2022, this pump did suffer a failure and was offline for a period of weeks, during which time, as you can imagine, there's hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that we're then purchasing through our utility. So it would depend on the type of failure, if it's a repair or if it's a replacement, but it could potentially be offline for months, depending on when parts are able to be obtained.
Very good. Any other questions?
How long has this been budgeted? Is this just the last couple of years or been a while or?
At least the last 4 years.
60% chance we're gonna make it without using, I mean, any idea, or it's complete 50-50, who knows?
I would say it's 50-50.
Okay.
Anybody else? If not, we will move on to the accepting any motions approving the updated 2024 wastewater fund expense budget as presented. So moved. Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. Seconded, Councilmember Swanberg. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8C, R 2024-006, governmental fee schedule update. This is a little lengthy. Mr. Roby, you want to review what you want to review there or summarize what you want to summarize?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As city council members here at the table will recall, it's not uncommon for staff to bring forward updates to the governmental fee schedule that go throughout the year. There were some items that we were not able to calculate in time for the initial adoption back in December, and that's specific to the wastewater overage rates for 2024. These are typically included in the governmental fee schedule. We don't do our billing for overages until after the first month of the year anyway, so we haven't missed any timelines here. These just need to be approved by the end of January. So they've been calculated by the Public Services Department and brought forward today. There are no other changes proposed to the fee schedule at this time, just the addition of the overage rates.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Roby regarding this matter? If not, I will accept any motions adopting resolution R 2024-06 approving the proposed updates of the 2024 governmental fee schedule.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan, second by Councilmember Williams. Oh, did I say Sullivan? I'm sorry, I take that back. Councilmember Swanberg, seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8D, the Bulldog Youth Hockey Association Ice Arena Advertising Agreement. Mr. Roby.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So historically, the city staff have worked collaboratively with the Bulldog Youth Hockey Association to sell advertising at the arena, and that's both for any advertising that goes on the walls in the arena, dashboard advertising, et cetera. What we have in front of City Council tonight is a formal agreement that outlines how the advertising can be sold, who maintains creative control over the advertising, and what those funds are used for. And the agreement in front of City Council is a 1-year agreement for 2024. It will renew in 2025 unless either party chooses to terminate it. Bulldog Youth Hockey has the authority to sell the advertising, but the city staff, specifically Recreation Manager Allison Watkins, maintains creative control over what the advertising looks like and where it's placed. And then the association has agreed to earmark 30% of net proceeds from the advertising sales into a capital improvements fund, which is referenceable by city staff. So if we have a capital need at the arena that we recognize as a city, we would work collaboratively with Bulldog Youth to determine how much funding is available in that advertising fund to make capital improvements to the arena.
Very good. Anybody have any questions for our city administrator regarding this?
I have one question, just the January 1 to December 31st. It seems an odd timing since it'll be in the middle of the hockey season.
It's strictly because there is no agreement right now. And so, yes, it is in the middle of the season. But effectively, we wanted it in place as soon as possible.
Okay. So there is potential to change those dates down the road. I mean, I'm very thankful and appreciative this finally got done. But if I'm an advertiser and I'm going to lose my advertising in the middle of the hockey season, that's going to be a bit of a head scratcher.
So just to be clear, in the agreement itself, if the contract is terminated at any point, the advertising agreements that are in place at the time of the termination would remain in place. So if you're an advertiser, so there are advertising agreements that Bulldog Youth will enter into with a business, and those are separate from this. This is simply an agreement on who is allowed to sell that advertising, what those funds are going to be used for. So if Bulldog Youth signs a deal in July to put dashboard ads on in September and run for 5 years, and we get to the following April and this contract terminates, or the terms of the agreement change for some reason, that agreement with the business stays in place. Okay, it stays with the Bulldog Youth Hockey Association. And similarly, the city has some contracts with advertisers that go back several years. Those contracts remain in place, and those funds have already been distributed.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'll entertain any motions to approve the proposed agreement with the Bulldog Youth Hockey Association and direct the city administrator to execute said agreement.
So moved.
Thanks by Councilmember Swanberg, second Councilmember Sullivan. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to agenda item 8E, personnel action. AmeriCorps Forestry Corps intern. Mr. Roby, you want to explain this to us?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city has had an AmeriCorps forestry intern previously. Anyone remembers the tree lady who drove around in a high-vis vest and a city pickup doing an inventory of all the public trees within city limits? That work was truly invaluable that she provided during her time here. Worked great with staff and gave us some really terrific tools specific to the emerald ash borer mitigation efforts that the city's undertaken since her time here. Our previous public works manager, Scott Schrader, had actually applied for another intern, had not heard back. And of course, Scott left us in July of 2023. He didn't leave us, he's a Brainerd, but he's not here anymore in the city. And Scott left, we didn't hear anything from the state of Minnesota or AmeriCorps until earlier this month, when an email mysteriously appeared in Public Works saying, here's your intern, and they can start in mid-January. So this was somewhat of a surprise, but Public Works staff is really excited to bring this individual on board. It happens to be someone who's very familiar with the community, worked as a seasonal here with the city and the water and wastewater departments in the last couple of years. And so right now, our lead operator, Shane Miner, and Public Works manager, George Schmidt, are building a work plan for this intern. And it includes working through the EAB mitigation plan, planning for 2025's mitigation plan, updating the tree inventory based upon the replanting that has been done recently. We'd like the intern to do an Arbor Day presentation, which is other communities around here have done. It's a community-wide event. And there's going to be all kinds of other things that they come up with. So at this point, it's zero cost to the city. The AmeriCorps pays for all of their time. The intern would be full-time, and we'd like him to start tomorrow if City Council accepts taking on an intern through mid-July of 2024.
Wonderful. Anybody have any questions regarding this subject at all? If not, I will entertain any motions to approve the acceptance of AmeriCorps' intern, Mr. Peter Turek. Thank you, Councilmember Schläger.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Williams. Any other comments, concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Moving on to item 8F, this will be the R 2024-004 Oak Street parking designation. Mr. Roby, how did we come about this?
So City Code, Section 71.02 allows City Council to designate parking restrictions, and that means everything from painting curbs to putting up signs if parking restrictions or the lifting of parking restrictions is appropriate. City staff learned that there's some challenges specifically on Oak Street, the 100 block of Oak Street between North Main and North 2nd Street. I have a map here, it's in your packet as well. It's a little red, you can't see the pointer on the screen, of course. It's a little red bar, it's about 30 feet directly across from the alley access, which is on the north side of Oak Street. So the challenge we have here is that there is, because of the housing in that area, there are folks who use on-street parking, and emergency services vehicles, our garbage and recycling trucks, snow plows, and other street maintenance equipment can have trouble accessing the alley using Oak Street. And so what's happening is we have some trucks, not city trucks, but other trucks who need to access that alley who are using the private parking lot on the north side of Oak Street. And that parking lot, of course, is not a 10-ton rated parking lot, so it's detrimental to the property owner. And there is no alley on the south side, so it's a difficult access. So the recommendation from staff is to establish a parking restriction and roughly a 30-foot length on the south side of Oak Street between North Main and North 2nd. We would put conspicuous signs and paint the curb. Taking questions.
And that would start when?
As soon as we can get signs up.
Immediately?
As soon as we can get the signs up and the curb marked, and we'll also notify the property at 125 Oak Street of the apartment building restriction, of the restriction, just so they can make their tenants aware.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, I will entertain any motions to adopt resolution R 2024-004 establishing parking restrictions along Oak Street as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Huntington.
Second.
Councilmember Swanberg seconded. Any other discussion, comments, or concerns? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to reports and items of appreciation. Council members, this is your opportunity to share what's going on in your commissions, what's going on in your community. And as always, we start with Councilmember Huntington.
I've got nothing for tonight.
Tonight, moving on to Councilmember Schrader.
I had a Region 9 full board meeting on Wednesday, January 10th, and as Administrator Roby mentioned in his update, we had a follow-up meeting on Friday. Planning Commission meeting on January 11th. Autumn Radines was sworn in as a new member. Newell Krogman was reelected as chair and Chris Roeder as vice chair. I attended a HRA meeting on the 17th. An upcoming Leesburg County officials meeting is on the 31st, and it's going to be in Lee Center.
Thank you, Councilmember Schrader. Moving on to Councilmember Sullivan.
Had a transit meeting last 2 weeks ago. Nothing to note there. Then we had an EDA meeting. I think Joe kind of touched on the important stuff there. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanberg.
Just a thank you to city staff who are responsible for getting the outdoor ice going. Hopefully it will last through the next 10 days or so as the heat wave comes through. It's kind of a never ending project, but I am very thankful and appreciative of the work that they do.
How long is this outdoor ice rink been open?
I think just a couple days.
Okay. Well, that's too bad. Moving on to Councilmember Williams.
Attended an HRA meeting on the 17th also, and we elected new officers, and we'll be attending a tenant committee meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. And I want to end things. Tomorrow night have a LeSueur Henderson Community Ed meeting, and that's all I have going on. I just want to remind everybody, next council meeting is the 12th. And afterwards, we will have a little work session, a workshop afterwards. So kind of keep that in mind. With that, I will entertain any motions to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.